Thanks very much, Michael, for that embarrassing introduction. But, it's a great pleasure to have Michael make the leap from education to the School of Communication, because, as Michael just said, that there's a kind of an urgency, I guess, to the convergence of our fields. So thank you very much to Rebecca for inviting me on the spur of the moment. I think when she was visiting QUTE in December 2017 for our symposium At Home with Digital Media, where we had a really terrific conversation between education folks and people who just work on domestic uses of digital media. And it's really nice to be at this event. This is a new scholarly community for me, so I'm hoping to listen really hard and learn a lot. Let's see if I can provoke some interesting conversation. I think that's really my job. But there are some bits and pieces of this that I'm going to read out, because this is sort of new work. I'm working through ideas. It's going to be something, some kind of formal paper or something at some point. And we're starting off with something I learned last week at AIR Montreal, which is how to make a deep fried meme. So we're starting off with deep fried Peppa Pig. Since we're in the Midwest, I think I'm allowed to make meat jokes. Okay, so a lot of the theme of this conference is around the home and domestication. I think it's fair to say that by this point, the formerly wild landscape of YouTube has been thoroughly domesticated by the toddlers of the world, the most voracious consumers of streaming media content that I've ever seen. I don't know if any of you have seen any of those viral videos of like 6 months old declining the boss's call as it comes in on the phone to get back to the video that they're watching. Or many, presumably that hasn't happened to any of you because you still have jobs. So in a distinct shift from the early years of YouTube, coinciding with the rise of mobile media and its intimate, personalised and locative characteristics, YouTube has become very popular with very young children, whether watching on their own, on a parent's device, co-watching with peers and parents in the home as well as out and about. So you know, the domestication of YouTube, of course, via mobile media doesn't just mean in the home. Many of you have already thought quite a bit, I'm sure, about the mobility of intimate and domestic spaces. And this is a trend that's likely to intensify, I think, as YouTube becomes embedded into all the smart TVs that run on Android. I read somewhere the other day a factoid, which I could not retrieve, unfortunately, that said the device where YouTube uptake is growing fastest is on televisions. And of course, televisions expect search input by voice. So we might want to think a little bit as we go through this talk about what that means for the findability of all sorts of stuff by very small people in the home. So I think there's, the assumption that the use of YouTube in domestic spaces means tablets and phones, maybe, I think, questioned a little bit. Anyway, does anybody not know the song that's being signified by that screenshot? Does anyone, content warning, cover your ears. Oh wait, I lost my mouse again. Oh.
You go.
Left?
Left.
Left?
And you're good.
Click here to subscribe.
Oh no, that's not Baby Shark, it's Monkey Banana. Okay, I need to close the tab now. This is just as bad. Oh no, this is a flawed plan because I can't. Oh no! I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah.
This is a mimetic iteration on Baby Shark. And when I come back to YouTube again in a minute, I'm gonna have to crowdsource the movement of my cursor because I've got the trackpad here, no glasses on, and it's gonna go up there. So let's go back. So across national boundaries, some of the most popular YouTube channels are focused on kids' content like nursery rhymes, unboxing videos, and cartoons. So this chart is from a few days ago from the third-party metrics service Social Blade, and they have a Social Blade rank that kind of combines viewing and sort of channel legitimacy via the network of connections between channels. And there's about, I think, 3 channels there that are gameplay channels, and all of the rest are nursery rhymes and very, very young kids' content. Whereas if you look at the most subscribed channels, so representing older kids and adults' practices, because babies don't tend to hit subscribe yet. You'll see PewDiePie, you'll see the big vloggers, you'll see big musicians, you'll see Rihanna, etc. So in terms of what's actually getting watched, although there's some question about whether it's all humans watching all of these videos, kids' content rules the platform at the moment. And of course, in media and popular discourse, YouTube's always been a focus of adult anxieties about children. Many of us are anxious about this very topic, but heightened concerns have emerged as YouTube has become a part of kids' everyday media practice in this way, in this very embedded, ubiquitous way. In response, in 2015, YouTube launched the YouTube Kids app. Shout out to Jared Walzer, whose paper last week at AIR performed a forensic walkthrough using the walkthrough method of the app, and everything I know about it, I know because he did the empirical work, so thank you, Jared. So YouTube Kids app, many of you know, of course, is a mobile-only advertising-supported version of the YouTube platform with embedded parental controls and curated content, increasingly human-created content because the algorithms don't work. But even within the safety of this walled garden, informally commercial content like unboxing videos and influencer vlogs have raised regulatory concerns, especially in countries that restrict advertising to children. So drawing on the work of David Craig and Stuart Cunningham, which Jared worked as an RA on there. In this way, YouTube's disrupting the broadcast era's close articulation between branded, geo-restricted content and children's screen safety, in which children's television content is regulated for age appropriateness, educational value, and so on. Branded or unbranded content pitched at children outside this regime appears to many concerned actors like unregulated chaos, which is further fed by the YouTube platform's algorithmic logics of attention. It is this feeling of mounting chaos that has been manifesting in recent public controversies about kids' content on YouTube. So famously, many of you will have seen this piece or pieces in the mainstream media reporting on this piece, or sort of other blog posts and so on riffing on it. So this is James Bridle. It's a screenshot from his TED talk on the same topic. There's a new book coming out called The New Dark Age, Jared. So this article came out in November 2017, followed by the TED talk, and this is this was a piece about alarming kids' content appearing even within the safety of the walled garden of the YouTube Kids app. And I've picked it up not because I want to use it as a kind of important secondary source, but because it's a manifestation of an acute controversy around kids' content and YouTube and algorithmic logics and so on. So it's a controversy that brings together the political economy of childhood, anxieties about algorithmic curation, and the ambivalence of the popular culture of the web. So working sort of forensically but in an overwrought tone through a series of examples, his piece expresses alarm about the apparently endless supply of poor quality, harmful, and perhaps even deliberately abusive content available on YouTube that is aimed at very, very, very young children, babies, essentially. So he uses the emergence of concerns about fake Peppa Pig videos that were available in the YouTube Kids app alongside official ones as a jumping off point. capturing an anxiety that had been bubbling up among internet-savvy parents, which is many of you in the room, I know, and tech observers for a while. But it's also, and the reason that I got interested, because I don't primarily study children's content, although I'm becoming obsessed with it now, what interested me is that it connected far more broadly to a growing sense that we've lost the open web we wanted or that we dreamed of, not only to increasingly enclosed corporate platforms, but also to the worst of our fellow internet users. So really highlighting something that should have been obvious all along, that it's not like the internet platforms are like Mordor and all the internet users are little hobbits. There's bad people as well. Our peers are not necessarily acting with good intent. Our peers are not necessarily our peers. They could be highly organised alt-right subcultures or Russian mischief makers. Oh, and that the mischief propagated by bad actors is specifically designed to exploit and benefits from the platform's business logic. So this is the kind of challenge. So this is illustrated in the piece initially by the presence of straight rip-off channels in the search results for Peppa Pig, which, as I'm sure you all know, an animated children's TV show dating from, I think, the beginning of the 2000s with highly significant transnational popularity, so that's important. It's broadcast all over the world on mainstream commercial cable and public service media channels. Its iconic and recognisable characters, its boundless supply of cheap, iterable content make it a compelling source of viewing pleasure and transmedia spreadability for children. And of course, because of its popularity with children, it automatically becomes the site of anxiety, right? So Peppa Pig is the topic of many complaints to television stations, and that transcultural stuff doesn't always work so well. So there was a complaint to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, our public service broadcaster, about an episode of Peppa Pig where she learns that spiders can be your friends. For those of you planning to come to Australia next year, they're not necessarily your friends in Australia. They're quite likely to kill you, actually. But there's never any spiders in Brisbane, are there, Michael?
Oh, no.
Also, you won't get jet lag. It'll be fine. And in fact, I think it's fair to say that, you know, Peppa Pig is kind of a metonym for kids' content. So I know that from my Google alerts, where I'm always getting stories that aren't really about Peppa Pig. It stands in for sticking something on the screen, the electronic babysitter, right? But Bridle and other commentators went on to investigate further, highlighting the presence of other inappropriate or off content, ranging from the mildly weird or disturbing through to graphic horror and violence. Importantly, such videos work by riffing off existing tropes in the original children's content, as in the many horror-laden versions of an original Peppa Pig episode in which Peppa visits the kindly dentist and everything's fine. And so in the alternative universe of Dark Peppa Pig, which is sometimes funny and sometimes really genuinely disturbing, anyway, she goes to the dentist and it's not fine. There's huge syringes in one version, I think a chainsaw. So this is the point at which it's very difficult to figure out where the boundaries between vernacular internet memes, light-hearted parodies, and content that's deliberately designed to disturb children becomes difficult. I actually need my mouse back, so hang on a second. But can you see it? No?
There it is.
Where?
You've got to move it again, I think.
Maybe it's in the black space of
Oh,
It's at the top of the screen.
Okay, I need to move it down.
There we go.
Down.
Too far down.
No, I need it down here. No, it won't. It's okay. I just have to make up the stuff that I can't see. So this is what I think is actually going on here and what got me really interested. It's that the whole very complex universe with all its histories and policy debates and so on of commercial children's media is converging and becoming entangled with what I call the platform logics of the ambivalent internet, and all the words there are important. So with the ambivalent part, I'm borrowing from Whitney Phillips and Ryan Milner's book, The Ambivalent Internet. So where ambivalence is created by the flat architectures logics and dynamics of digital media platforms, so that authorship is uncertain or ambivalent, sometimes deliberately so in the mischief-making contexts of meme culture. You don't know who's making stuff, why they're making it, who they're making it for, who the imagined audience is, and therefore it's very hard to understand meaning, actually. So this is quite interesting for the study of culture. Oh yeah, spiders, deadly spiders. So the textual characteristics of kids' content turn out to be completely amenable to meme culture, and that's what's really interesting to me here. So, of course, the episodes are short. They have punchlines, hooks, and grabs. They're designed to provoke engagement, laughter, singing, participation, and as well as having underlying earnest moral lessons, which is just like catnip to meme makers, right? So the kind of primary audiences for this stuff is babies or toddlers on the one hand and would-be meme lords of the internet on the other, which is, I think, kind of new and interesting. Anyway, okay, here we go again. Up, yes. I need the second tab. So this is, does it say head, shoulders,
Yes,
toes? So this is a bit of the episode about singing and dancing with music, I forget the name of it, where...
I like this. It's very grown
Sorry, yeah.
up.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and
Sing
toes.
along after lunch.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes, and eyes and ears and mouth and nose. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes.
So let me ask you, what memes do you think could possibly be created out of this? I don't, so it's the line that was cut off is, I don't like little kids' music, I like grown-up music. And then the tension, of course, is provided by heads, shoulders, knees and toes is a kid's nursery rhyme. So what would you substitute that with? I think this is the right one.
Guess.
Body part.
I like this. It's very grown up.
Ass, titties, ass and titties,
Oh,
ass, titties,
Okay, you get the idea. Plus with a bit of cheap psychedelic editing, the Doors, death metal, all very funny. A little, I mean, with the exception of arse and titties, maybe like the trippy Doors thing maybe isn't such a problem. But cutting to footage of Syria, where there's just been an explosion, or in one case a beheading, not so funny. I don't think anyone could, well, not anyone. I'm trying to get back to PowerPoint. Can you see the mouse?
Yes.
Yeah.
On the video, scroll down.
But now we can't.
Hmm.
On the YouTube window.
No, oh, I see. Got it. Okay, sorry about that. We won't cut to YouTube anymore. So, as is usual in meme culture, the more variations that are created on the show's iconic textual elements or hooks, the more exploitable they become. So, this grown-up music meme's a prominent example. It exploits this episode from Chloe's Big Friends episode. Oh yeah, I forgot about the Belarus national anthem. And there's mashups of, because this became a meme, therefore it started to get mashed up with all kinds of other memes like My Little Pony and stuff like that. So these mashups and memes are not necessarily meant for kids, but they can easily find their way into kid-centered flows of related content thanks to the YouTube-related videos algorithm. So Peppa Pig's a rich case study of the ambivalence of vernacular digital culture and the limits of corporate control over who, in terms of age-based market segments, can access or be targeted with which content. So we have this confounding situation where there's a huge archive of very popular cultural material whose primary audiences are toddlers on the one hand and would-be meme lords on the other. But it's not just fake Peppa Pig videos or memes. The speed and scale of the kind of content that appears to be at least partially automated, or as I've learned, uses freely available motion capture videos and 3D skins of famous superheroes and so on, which is being produced in content factories all over the world, makes fake Peppa Pig videos look positively artisanal and hokey. And you know, there is just an avalanche, as all of you know, of course, of this these endless variations on just a few themes. Nursery rhymes, learning colours, and as we were talking about at lunch, there are only 4 colours. There's bright red, there's very bright green, and there's yellow and there's blue, and that's it. Learning numbers, being in a nuclear family, nursery rhymes, earnest moral lessons. There's just so much of this stuff that it's actually quite hard to fathom how it's all getting as many views as it is. So people are starting to think about automated views and so on, as I was saying before. Oh, I took out the really disturbing page. Yeah. Well, then there was a page of all of this stuff where that Bridal complains about in the article that is there, like anything involving Elsa from Frozen getting into really dangerous and violent situations, rescued by or in a compromising situation with Spider-Man, plus learning colours, and then there's the whole mismatched colours, which is a fun puzzle, except then it's mismatched heads instead, which is like, it's not really violent, but it's just kind of weird and off. And the point that I'm coming around to saying is that just thinking, well, that's off or that's suspicious, so we'll turn the whole thing off, is inadequate, and we need to understand much more about what's going on here. So, as I said earlier, converging and colliding logics. So, the platform logics, so streaming endlessly on an endless choice of apparently undifferentiated material, datification, personalization, and automation in terms of both content creation cultures and consumption cultures, in turn colliding and converging with competing content cultures. So internet meme culture, traditional commercial children's screen media, native online video genres like unboxing and whatever's going on with nursery rhymes these days. Combining and converging to create a new universe, a new genre system that is quite difficult to understand, I think. Those are the disturbing slides. Yeah, so this sort of stuff that I was talking about, you know, Elsa getting into very dangerous situations and so on, it turns out that a lot of that content or content like it was being produced by a content factory in Guangzhou, and the Chinese authorities acted swiftly to get a lot of that content removed. But the assumption that people in the West make that, oh, this is some mischievous 4chan meme guy in a basement, I think is incorrect. There's a pretty big industry here. It's a very strange industry, but it's there. And so I've made the first 2 points there. So the final point there is, as I was saying, that I think kids' content is unique in disrupting the boundaries between kind of the formal and informal content economies of YouTube, between traditional broadcast media content and made-for-web content. So it's an interesting space. And who's timing me?
24 minutes.
15 minutes.
Thank you. So while Bridal made some really admirable attempts and some progress in piecing together some of this cultural economy of kids' content, the dominant reactions in the mainstream press, predictably, and comments from the public on those stories were largely characterised by sort of distrust and refusal and fear and blame. We're very familiar with this, of course. Distrust and fear always of the big platforms, but blame almost always directed at parents, right? So why aren't you supervising your children? I don't need to rehearse this stuff with you guys, and we'll talk more about that. But sometimes just, it's this kind of, well, it's capitalism, what do you expect? You can't trust YouTube. I think this is a very dangerous way of thinking. So that's what I want to come to. We don't know enough about what this content actually is, how and why it's produced and by whom or what, and using what tools and technologies, and why it isn't getting taken down for copyright violation. I mean, I find the extent of just fake, like, rip-off sections of edited bits of Peppa Pig videos, I find that really weird. In music videos, the automated content copyright violation detection mechanisms would have that stuff down in a second. So I don't know why that's happening. Anyway, these questions are not even part of the picture for most mainstream media coverage. The really interesting stuff you find in Medium articles or in Know Your Meme articles on weird little corners of Reddit, like the subreddit Out of the Loop, which I rely on very heavily because I go to meetings all the time and I don't have enough time to catch up on what's going on the internet. So I think that the opportunity for these sorts of controversies to open up public conversation and enhance digital literacy, which I mean in a generalised public sense, not in an individual sense, are being squandered. Because the public conversation is far too invested in regulating for trust and safety and not enough in the means that are necessary to judge trustworthiness. So the means for knowledge and literacy. I think trust is actually a bit of a dangerous discourse. So anyway, as a result of the public attention given to these controversies, YouTube has instituted a series of crackdowns and changes, beginning, as I said earlier, with more human involvement in the curation of content on the YouTube Kids app, banning problematic channels on YouTube proper, more actively, and recently introducing a whitelist feature as part of the app's parental controls, as well as 2 age brackets. So you could have a sort of young, I forget what it's called, younger and older. And the idea is that the younger kids are going to be doing the nursery rhymes and branded toddler tube content, and older kids are going to be interested in Let's Play videos and gaming. So it's kind of a tween setting. And this quote is representative of a lot of the answers to the question, well, what should we do about this? Even from, as I said, internet-savvy parents. They're basically appealing to an earlier, safer time when, as well as, riding your bike on the street, cozy brand deals between television stations, compliance with regulatory frameworks and so on, made for a safe, well-lit environment for kids and their media use. This absolutely terrifies me, right? So what we're being asked to do here is to say, let's let Google, which completely monopolises online kids' content and extracts data from all of our use of that content, do cozy brand deals with Disney and Nickelodeon, and that's going to be a much more productive, safer environment for kids. Given that we're all invested in kids' literacy, agency, creativity and learning, and also given that this can be extrapolated to the media environment far more broadly, this is terrifying from a participatory pop culture point of view. So, but Bridle does end his piece with a very good provocation, which is about the very real challenge of public oversight, of agency, of even figuring out what agency would look like in a media environment that we really don't understand very well yet. And these are the sort of options that I see being rehearsed in policy and in public conversation, as well as more generally in the internet studies and digital media policy communities about platform regulation. So first of all, we need to restore trust to the media environment, right? Which kind of means one of those first 2 things there. The first is to delegate trust and safety to platforms. Demand that they be more trustworthy and let them get on with doing it. And what you'll get is defensive responses like YouTube Kids app that locks out everything but Nickelodeon and Disney. Secondly, of course, we would like to have increased public oversight and regulation, so discourses of transparency. But of course, transparency is no mean feat when it comes to the massive kind of pools of data, the algorithmic processes and so on that curate them, even the business models of YouTube. There's no single person working there who actually understands all this stuff. If you talk to the people who work with creators, they don't necessarily have access to a lot of the back-end data. They might not know to what extent all of YouTube's content archive is really there just to train machine learning. So it's a massive loss leader. So oversight in the traditional sense of having representatives of the public who can see in to what's going on, I think is a bit fraught. What I'm much more interested in is how, as citizens, as parents, as educators, we can work together creatively to try to figure out what's going on here. So I read a little bit of philosophy of trust stuff, and it's super interesting because I think the smartest people in that field are saying that you don't want to reinvest trust. What you want is an attitude of curious and playful mistrust. So what we want is the means to assess trustworthiness, and that means we've got to know what's going on. That means we've got to be active, we've got to be engaged, and we've got to be creative. Because, you know, we built YouTube, we built the internet, and we still do with everything we do there. So what does it mean for the public to have oversight of something that we're actively engaged in creating and participating in, although not in conditions of our making? So, and where I see hope, as I was saying, is in the very site of the problem. So meme cultures, like meme making, is the place where I have learned the most about how this universe of kids' content is being made. It's also really creative. So I learned about the sharing of motion capture libraries and superhero skins from reading Know Your Meme and other weird little corners of the internet where famous meme makers got together to discuss whether or not, why Johnny, yes Papa is a meme and how long it will be one and where it came from. I learned way more about that from those sources than I did from any of my primary research, certainly from going to scholarly databases or reading The Guardian. So I will leave it there, apart from a few suggested links, because I'm aware that I'm a bit like of an alien in this environment. So I tried to think about how everything that I've just confronted you with might link to the sorts of questions that we're supposed to be discussing, and to Julian's provocation paper as well. So the question for this session was, in what ways does the digital change relationships between the political economy of children's culture and theories of learning? So theories of learning I leave to all of you. But of course, with these anxieties, these media panics, sometimes quite justified, whose learning are we talking about, whose responsibility? So it's often about, you know, a deficit model of literacy on behalf of both parents and kids, but I prefer sort of collective models of public literacy, public knowledge and public learning. So how can we learn together about what's going on and shape the future of kids' media and how it is engaged with in the home or in other domestic spaces? And trying to bring back in that teaser at the end about how meme culture is actually the most productive source of knowledge about what's going on in let's say, quasi-formal, quasi-commercial kids' culture. How can, of course, kids' creative media practices be a bridge to learning about, well, you know, oh, I see that, what kind of video that is for parents and for kids. And by the way, that's the explanation for why Elsa is always getting into these situations, because she's one of the 3D skins that is most shared on torrent sites. So you could come to all kinds of other conclusions about what's going on there culturally if you didn't know that. Anyway, I'll leave it there.